Let me welcome here Martin Vlachynský, analyst at Pedal Consulting. And he didn't say the name of the presentation, I think because he was expecting to choose according to your mood, energy, and so on. So I will just say that he's an economic analyst, both in commercial and non-profit realms. And the stage is yours, and I'll be surprised by myself what it will be about.
Thank you. I'm not sure if it's true. I wanted to choose according to your mood, and I think I'm the very last person speaking now. Yeah, I should be cracking jokes to cheer you up. Unfortunately, all I have is this PowerPoint. So let's go to it. Just let me briefly introduce myself. My name is Martin Vlachynský. Those who are Slovak maybe know me as an economic analyst, but I also do some consultancy, partnering with Pedal Consulting, which is an international small SME consulting company, and also partner in the Altfinator project. As you can guess, it's not very difficult to guess what Altfinator stands for. It's alternative financing, or better to say, about facilitating access to alternative financing. So, well, what is the story behind? I mean, there are many innovative companies which emerged in the last 10, 15, 20 years. The whole startup environment startup is a great buzzword. I mean, if you look around, here are many innovative companies which are just starting. Unfortunately, or maybe not unfortunately, but that's the case, many of these companies have certain problems, and one of them is that they are not fit for traditional financing. For a number of reasons, they are not mature enough, they have negative cash flow, they have immature structures, business models which don't fit traditional financing. Market responded, and the whole sector of alternative financing emerged in the last 10, 15 years. But also, this sector is in early stages, especially in Europe, and it's not spread evenly across European countries. So the main challenge of the Altfinator project is to bring those two worlds closer. The SMEs with needs for finance and investors who want to provide finances via or invest finances via alternative ways. And the ultimate goal of this project, which is financed by COSME, by the EU, is to improve the competitiveness of European SMEs because, again, as probably most of you know, a lot of innovative companies, even which emerge in EU, are leaving EU usually for the United States. So the Altfinator project, how does it want to solve, or not solve, but face this problem, is in 4 steps. The very first step was mapping of the whole alternative financing environment in EU and the whole ecosystem, the needs of startups in terms of finances. The second step was to develop a capacity building strategy and a plan to implement these findings. These 2 steps serve as a resource for steps 3 and 4. Step 3 is creating pan-European online hub or online platform, which already exists under altfinator.eu, which should provide users with the information, with the knowledge which was gathered during the first 2 steps, and also to create local, national hubs, not really in a formal way, but more in an informal way, a space where potential providers, SMEs, and also policymakers can communicate, discuss the barriers, and hopefully improve the environment to make alternative financing for SMEs more available in the countries. Here are some examples of the activities which Altfinator, with the project Altfinator, does. There are dozens of events organized throughout the partner countries. these are either closed doors, various workshops with SMEs, with alternative financing providers, also with traditional finance providers, but also with policymakers, some open public roundtables, best practices workshops, and also a number of online events like the MOOC, which I always forgot what it really means, but it means Massive Open Online Courses. So there's actually one starting in, I think, October 7th, and it has like 21 lessons about alternative financing. I mentioned there are several partner countries. More specifically, there are 11 partner countries in this project, focusing on 19 countries. There are 8 core countries and 11 outreach countries. As you can see from the map, the focus is on the southern and especially eastern and southeastern Europe. Why? I will answer it in a few slides, but one stop here. I'm talking about alternative financing. Maybe everybody can imagine something different. So the project defined it by specifically selecting 2 types of alternative financing. One we call traditional types of untraditional financing, which is business angels, venture capital funds, family offices, and so on. And also online alternative financing platforms, which are mainly various forms of crowdfunding, but also, for example, peer-to-peer business lendings and similar. As I mentioned, among the first steps of the project was a comprehensive mapping of the environment, where we tried to measure the size of alternative financing ecosystem in various countries in the EU. As you can see from the perspective of volume of alternative financing, United Kingdom is a total outlier. The 90% of alternative financing is happening in the United Kingdom, followed by France and Germany. Southern Europe is doing a bit better than Eastern Europe, where the amounts of alternative financing are so small that it's even difficult to make some kind of ranking, because you have 1, 2 successful projects which are financed, and it will completely mix up the rankings. Of course, we are on the left column, we are talking about the total amounts. In the right column is the per capita amount. Again, United Kingdom is first, but what's interesting, I think you already noticed, is how good our Baltic states, or how different our Baltic states when you compare it on a per capita basis. Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia have considerably more alternative financing per capita than, for example, Slovakia, or even some southeastern countries like Greece. So that's why Altfinator is focusing on the South and especially Eastern Europe, because the environment, the alternative financing environment, is really small in this part of Europe. It's not only in the terms of the size of the finances, it's also in the terms of number of various providers. Here you can see how it's dispersed throughout the 3 regions we sub-selected, and South Europe, which means Portugal, Spain, and Italy, have much more providers in terms of numbers. But even here, you can see the group we call online alternative finance providers is considerably smaller in all these regions compared to the traditional, untraditional providers like venture capital and business angels, which is probably not surprising. We also try to identify number of barriers, or why the size of this environment is not as big as maybe somebody would hope. This was done through various events, as I mentioned before, also via direct interviews with a large number of stakeholders in each partner country. And we came to 3 distinct categories of barriers and problems. The very first one is the role of the government and the regulation. It's no surprise, financial sector is very heavily regulated, and it makes really big difference if an emerging alternative finance provider is able to slip through the laws into some gray zone, or if they are noticed very soon and they are forced into the position of like, hey, you are a bank, you have to follow regulations as a bank, which usually means that the alternative finance provider has problems or cease to exist. So the role of a government was probably the most often quoted barrier in emergence of this kind of finances. Also, the second group of problems is the lack of knowledge, especially on the side of SMEs. I personally interviewed a number of providers who said we have so many cases of SMEs coming to us with no business model, just with some very broad idea, I want to do this and you give me so much money. And they really even didn't have an idea how to prepare a business plan for an investor, especially for an investor who has maybe a specific need, since it's not a bank but an alternative provider. And the third group of barriers is general risk aversion, which we believe is higher in the post-socialistic countries. And generally it's higher in the EU compared to the United States, where even small investors are more eager to go into more risky business, not to say large investors, but the risk awareness and also a lack of trust, which is again some kind of specific of Eastern European countries, mean a big barrier. So how Adfinator wants to challenge these barriers? It's by number of tools. On the online platform, you can find everything I'm talking about. You can find on the altfinator.eu. It's process regulatory frameworks of each country which we explored. That means the complete description of how alternative financing can or cannot be legally done in that country. There is a created investor manual describing to investors what alternative financing is and what risks and what potential advantages it has for maybe investors who want to enter this field of alternative finance. There is a fintech outlook for several subsectors, trying to describe several scenarios how the subsector may develop in 3 to 5 years. There is a document about the best practices. I was talking about how different are the Baltic states. So there are a number of best practices, for example, from Estonia, how the environment for alternative finances works in Estonia, but also from other countries like United Kingdom or even United States, trying to identify what are the best practices. Very interesting is number 5. It's a huge list of FinData resources. Those who are Slovak probably know FinStat. So we collected all or similar providers of any kind of credit data or company data in every member country. So you can find it there if you want to inquire about the company in, I don't know, Moldova or Ukraine. You will find a potential source of information about how much taxes they pay or what's their turnover or all this kind of information. And of course, number 6 is a matchmaking tool. You have even some small print screen. It's a tool for matching SMEs who are in need of finance and who can define their needs. And for investors, where you define what kind of investor, angel investor, crowdfunding, which country, and it's generally a database trying to match your needs. Number 7 are the events I mentioned, and number 8 is the course and the MOOC, which starts 7th October. It's 27 lessons focusing on all kinds of questions which may arise about alternative finances. It's more focused on providers, but it can be very useful also for SMEs. And everything is freely accessible. So whenever you have a minute, just visit the website. Thank you very much. That's all.
Martin Vlachynský, the Altfinator. Thank you very much.